Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Layoff Legends podcast where resilience meets reinvention. I'm Leo, a product builder and storyteller, learning and turning my Microsoft layoff into a different path. With each pod, I sit down with legends that are rebuilding their lives after layoffs and with the experts that are helping them navigate their crossroads. Today, I'm talking to someone who took one of the most destabilizing moments of any career, a layoff, and really turned it into a season of clarity, creativity, and growth. He's a creator, and this is one of the things that's unique compared to all the other folks that we've introduced. So you are in for a treat. In his own words, his layoff was calm, intentional, and sometimes painful, but it wasn't chaotic or filled with panic. He did face the stigma of unemployment head on. He calls it the unemployment stank. But instead of shrinking, he actually found more of his voice. Today, Trey is building a community of over 10,000 people through content that is grounded, honest, and deeply human. He didn't try to be loud. He didn't try to go viral. He just told the truth, and that truth resonated with thousands of people around the world. And so, Trey, thank you for joining. Welcome to the Layoff Legends podcast.
Hey Leo, it's great to be here. I'm blushing, man. That intro was that was really sweet.
For real, man. It's interesting too. I think that we have these conversations and we do this work and we invest this time, but we don't recognize just how much of an impact that we're making in people's lives by just being honest, by just doing the thing that we're doing. Like I said, I watching some of your videos and the sense of authenticity, it's like, hey, I'm going to become an artist and I'm going to listen to my own voice. And we'll talk through that through the interview too, because I really do think Layoff really does push that. So thank you for sharing your authentic voice with the world. It's so awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Why don't we just get started with who you are?
So the one-liner, I'm an Aussie-based creative. I kind of straddle the line between a graphic designer, photo videographer, and a content creator. I've been in the digital marketing, social media space for about 4 or 5 years now.
You talk about being a creative and a graphic designer. Where in that world? Because it's pretty large.
I started my full-time career about 4 years ago. I started off in the hospitality space as an in-house designer for a hotel chain. And then I pivoted more towards events and then media landscape.
You're also doing some 3D animations and things like that, right?
Oh, yeah, I feel like for me, I've been like a creative ever since I was a child. And the medium that I choose just happens to be like the flavor of the year for me.
Okay, why don't we get into it? This is where stories matter. Chapters evolve into meaningful moments. Why don't we start with your layoff? What comes to your experience and thoughts you had when that was taking place?
So that happened about March of this year. And I was working at a tech startup as their in-house videographer. I'd been there for about almost 2 years at that point. And due to the economic pressures of the industry, things were starting to close in and they decided to consolidate their offices overseas, which meant that myself and the team in Australia were just out of jobs. And there was no real warning about it, but it was sort of a intuition, a feeling that everyone in the office kind of had. And I woke up one day, all my meetings were canceled on my timeline, but I had this one 30-minute call with HR and a random person. And there was an initial state of panic, but then I realized look, this is something that I was expecting for the past 2 months or so. Yeah, I just embraced that moment because I knew that most likely I was gonna get laid off. And there's a way to approach it where you kind of panic and you freak out. But I think these are the moments in life that you kind of remember. So I decided to take a more, not detached approach, but I was like, I just want to have fun with it. And I know that sounds very irresponsible, but I guess that's kind of the way I like to approach life sometimes. Bit of fun.
It's interesting too. Sometimes when things are super serious, there's something about lightness and brevity and just approaching with a sense of humor that actually makes it more manageable. Was it your first layoff?
The first meaningful layoff, I would say. I've been fired from retail jobs before, but I was back in college in those days and it doesn't really matter at that point, but I'm a grown ass man. I got bills to pay. So it was this actually matters for
No, that's interesting. And so you were all laid off together or was it just one by one?
It was a decision that happened across the board, but they decided to do one-on-one meetings with everyone.
What'd you guys do after that? I'm sure that you all knew that you were all laid off together. What was that community like after that experience?
I had a really great manager at the time who sent us a text straight after just asking us how we felt. And honestly, that meant a lot because I know that, I guess in professional contexts, things can seem very transactional at times, but it was like a coming together moment for everyone in the office. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join the celebration or the drinks because I had my annual leave to travel overseas booked already. And of course, they lay me off 1 week before that. So just Perfect timing.
Well, it's interesting. At least you're able to take that time off and in a sense of kind of detox, let it go, get your mind off something else. I would assume that if you stayed, that you would have had a completely different experience.
Definitely. I was in the mindset of like, you can't really change circumstances like that overnight. And this is a trip that I was looking forward to for months ahead. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy it and I'll deal with the problem of finding a new job when I come back.
You've already started to drop some gems, living in the moment, having fun with it, really having a sense of humor. So keep doing that. We're going to get into it a little bit more. Let's talk about your sense of self. One of the things I really liked what you said earlier was, this is who I am, and I just had to take the news this way. Did the unemployment, or at least the layoff experience, did it challenge your sense of self? Was there any part of you that felt really fragile when you had this experience?
As a creative, as as far as my sense of identity of like I'm a competent worker or I'm a competent artist or designer, that wasn't really shaken at all because I've gone through different jobs before and I've excelled in those and I have a breadth of experience that kind of proves to myself that I can do this. I think what really shook me the most was the financial component. I guess as a creative, you go into this industry thinking that it's a very top heavy industry, meaning that the vast majority will be unpaid or get minimum wage and only the top level will get above average income. And in the past, I guess 3 years or so, I started to see a bit of a gap between myself and some of my friends who I went to college with. And there was a sort of ego that I was developing, which I really tried to suppress. I only was only able to address it when like I actually got laid off and I didn't have that title of like, I'm a full-time working professional in the arts. So that was something that I really had to tackle head on when I lost my job because I couldn't fall back on this, I guess, this armor of like, yeah, I made it, you know.
What you're sharing resonates with what everyone else has said, where the name of the company was this implicit endorsement of who they
Mhm,
were and the skills that they had. And once that was stripped away, especially if their identities were really tied to that company, it's like, well, who am I? Am I still a great designer? Because you don't have that endorsement anymore. How did
mhm.
you deal with that?
It definitely was a challenge. I'm not gonna lie. When it first happened, I acted to myself. And I don't think that was a wrong thing. I think it's fine to kind of process these things internally before you start telling the world that hey, I'm unemployed. Maybe that's good for some people. I just feel like for me, I just wanted to, yeah, process my own emotions at first. I think the main thing that I addressed was there's a discrepancy between who I wanted to be and who I didn't want to be. And when I was quote unquote a starving artist, I never wanted to be this, for lack of a better word, like some kind of yuppie that isn't really making any work that's meaningful to them. I just kind of got sucked into this pipeline of just creating commercial work, trying to maximize as much money as I could. But when that money dried up, or at least that income stream dried up, I really had to address the fact that, okay, I spent all this time trying to be a commercial artist, a commercial designer. Now I don't even have that. What really makes me happy? What is my purpose in being a creative? And there was a sort of a realignment internally within myself. And I gained a lot of clarity of where I want to take my career, how much I want to distribute my efforts. Because I would love to say that overnight, I became this artist that now I just do the work that I'm truly passionate about. But I would say if I was leaning 100% commercial art, now I would say I'm more 70% commercial art and 30% being my own artist. So that's probably the biggest realignment that I've had since the layoff.
How did you go through that realignment? Did you sit down on a beach somewhere and you're like, okay, this is what I really want to do? This is what some of our community struggles with. You get laid off and you're like, oh my gosh, now what's next? I was a design director. And so I punch in design director in LinkedIn and I look at all these roles. There is almost a forced entry into the next chapter based on who you were in the last one. But you're talking about a realignment in what you really, really wanted to do. How did you get there?
I think I came to that conclusion because I realized as I was getting fired or the moment the news hit is that I can't really rely on external corporations or external people to give me a sense of meaning or give me a sense of purpose and that it can be taken away at any moment. So that's why I looked more inward to myself. I'm like, okay, what is it that I want to do?
Was that at the moment of the layoff? Did that unfold over time?
It definitely unfolded over time. On the surface, it happened in the moment, but those big revelations, maybe intellectually you comprehend it, but it takes a long time for it to really settle in. And I would say definitely the 5 week trip that I took, I had a lot of time to think about life and, myself and where I wanted to go. But I would say it's kind of been like a year-long journey to get to where I'm at right now.
Interesting. When I was laid off, it just so happened that my mom was going through some medical treatment and we had to go elsewhere to another country. And so there was a shift in mindset where that was all we as a family could think about. And so I had a little bit of of time to just disconnect from the realities of and take care of more more important things. And in that time, I was doing a lot of writing, I was doing a lot of journaling. And I think there's a recalibration that happens when, hey, look, these are the more important things in life than an identity or stuff like that. The what do I want to do next kind of comes later. For me, the aha moment of identity came first in that, wow, I'm feeling this shame, this sense of embarrassment. Am I good enough, etc. But the clarity in on what I was going to do next actually came from that. It didn't come at the same time. It's now that I have to face this. Now, what do I do, with what's next? If that makes any sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did you have that experience, or was that just something like that you already knew that over time?
For me, I would say I have to acknowledge the sort of privileged position I was in right now. Fortunately, I guess my family's good. My financial situation is pretty stable. So I could sort of bypass a lot of I guess, the lower Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I got to focus more on purpose and existential level goals in my life.
Right. I think that creatives have greater clarity in listening to themselves. I can't remember who this quote was from, but it talks about an artist is a child who survived, if that makes any sense. There's something about artists tend to be more empathetic. They tend to understand and see the world in a very different light. And a lot of that comes from not necessarily shutting out the world, but listening to themselves first.
Mhm.
And when I think about a layoff, you have this, to a certain extent, a shattering of your current reality, like you just described. But then there's a reliable path to listening to the person within because you've done that over and over. You've had to say, my drawing looks great when everybody else says, oh, it doesn't. And so I have a great respect for creatives because throughout their entire lives, they have learned to listen inward. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Totally agree. And you should call yourself a creative as well. The way you're saying, "Oh, I respect creatives," but you're part of it as well. You're a content creator.
I've learned to turn up that muscle. It's a muscle that like any muscle, as you work it, it gets stronger. I've upped my creative game, I think, with the podcast, with all this work that we've been doing. But yes, as you start to listen to yourself, the demons I'm fighting in my creative battle, you probably fought those X number of years ago because everybody that tries to bring out something that hasn't existed before, they do face this battle of identity and this battle of, will people like it? Is this good? And there's something about that. I think creatives process this type of news differently.
Yeah, early in my career, I would take it very personal if I had a critique of my creative work. But I think in my junior years, especially my first year working like an animation studio, I got that beat out of me very quickly because we would have critiques like almost daily at that point. And I realized, look, if I get 70% approvals and then 30% I have to do recuts or re-edits, that's actually a pretty good rate. So I should take that as evidence objectively that I'm good at what I do and I should not drown out the self-critical thoughts in my mind, but to realize that sometimes it's noise, sometimes it's just the feedback that you can improve on.
Do you think your voice would have been different if you hadn't been laid off?
Definitely it's improved for sure because I'm starting to undertake a lot of projects that I'm more passionate about myself and I'm focused more on my own intuition and if it makes me feel like this is more purposeful or I really like where this is going, I will tend to lean towards that these days. Unless I have a fussy client.
Do you have an opportunity to do that? So you get to pick the projects that you work on, or is it one of those things where you're kind of given the roles and the tasks?
I do some freelance videography and content creation. So that's where I get to flex my full creative direction.
Nice, nice. If we could shift for a little bit here, a lot of our audience is mid to senior in career, and so they've traversed this really well-worn path. But one of the things that the layoff has done is kept them on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you have an opportunity here. Like, what would you do differently, or what could you do differently?" I'm curious for someone like you that has been a creative for a while and this happened. What were some of the tools in your toolkit that you pulled out that helped you manage that transition?
I think for me, just knowing that you can't really control your emotions, but you can control how you respond to those emotions. So when you get laid off, it's very normal to doubt yourself, doubt your skills. But something I kept telling myself, and I don't know where I got this from. I don't know if I got this from a podcast or I'm just a genius. But it's this realization that yes, I got laid off from a job I was at for 2 years, but the person that I was 2 years prior when I got that job was a much less experienced, less mature, less financially stable version of myself. So if that guy could do it, then surely I can. So just having that objective statement, that really pulled me through a lot of that.
So it's pretty mature in that sense. It comes from a place of identity. It comes from a place of self-awareness, which I
Mm.
think is pretty great. And that pulls you through a lot of challenges in life. There's a sense of, if I've been able to do this here, I could definitely face this one, right? Did you deepen any of your creative experiences or muscle afterwards? Did you approach things differently, or was it just full steam ahead on what you already knew?
As far as like finding a new job, actually, yeah, as soon as I landed back from my trip, I just started applying for every job I could. And I was fortunate enough that I was able to go straight back into work. I was able to pick up a job within a month, but I wish that I didn't just land full steam ahead, because I think that if I'd taken a bit more time, that I'd have been able to process it a lot better. And a lot of that internal work, it might not have taken, a year. It might have been much quicker, and I would have been able to enjoy the time more, because one of the biggest things that I realize was just how much time I was dedicating to working, and not just actual time, but more like the emotional or mental energy towards it. I've been neglecting, hanging out with my family, hanging out with some friends. But when I had that time off, I was like, wow, I got all this time now. And this was time that I could have directed towards my relationships. And I would have enjoyed a bit more of a break. And I wish I enjoyed that more instead of just, going for the first offer that was given to me.
How does that how has that awareness affected how you manage your time today?
Definitely drawing boundaries from when I choose, from when work ends. And also because I work in social media space, in a way, I am on the clock 24/7, because whenever I see something on socials, there's an instinct to save it and to put it into like a mood board, which I can further use for future campaigns or content that I'll make for a client. But I've learned to just, if I see something, if I'm out with friends or I'm at a dinner, I'm not going to immediately take 2 minutes to copy and paste the URL, write some notes on it. Yeah, just really drawing that hard barrier.
So you're really being more present, just based on these learnings, right?
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
I loved your video. You're creating like you're running out of time. And
Hmm.
that's something that we'll definitely link in the comments for folks to go watch. It's a beautiful video. And you shared your experience about it was a little bit of a wake up call. Do you mind just sharing a little bit more about that and how you think about creating like you're running out of time?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a tough one to dive into, but about 10
Sure.
years ago, long story short, I got involved into a motorbike accident. Fortunately, I walked away with pretty minor injuries, but when I think back on that time, like I almost lost my life really. And it sort of was this inflection point in my life. After my motorbike accident, I realized that at the time I was a college dropout, but I had this realization afterwards that I was so close to dying in that moment. But if I did die, I would have died in this state of mind where I was waiting for life to happen. I was waiting for maybe divine intervention. I was waiting for a handout. I was waiting for opportunities to come my way, especially as a creative. And having this very definitive date and time, like I could tell you the exact date and time where I almost died. And all of my life would have just been in this perpetual waiting to launch moment. And I realized that if I want to actually take that step, if I want to create opportunities, I have to create them for myself. And ever since that moment, I would say that, yeah, I've been trying to just maximize the opportunities I get in life, because I was fortunate enough to get a second chance.
So for folks who are holding on or holding back their creative muscle or the things that they want to do, what would you say to them?
I would say you just have to go for it. I think the best definition of creative or an artist, because that term is just so vague, a lot of people, they might see it as like, oh, you have to get paid to do it. But my definition is if it hurts to not create, then you're an artist. And you owe it to yourself to go for that, to try to make something in your life. Because as cliche as it sounds, like you really only get one life. Unless you're Hindu, and then maybe you get multiple chances. But
That's so deep, man, because it's so true. there was something you said on the video that resonated with me around, hey, you're going to die anyway. And I think that was for me also one of the things that gave me the courage to start this. You do feel the layoff, you feel the embarrassment, you feel the shame. It's like, oh my gosh, you're putting yourself out there. But we've reached tens of thousands of people with this work. And it's really humbling to see that. If you can get over that sense of fear because you recognize our time is limited here anyway, no one's going to remember. You look at the challenge differently, and you look at it as an opportunity to grow
Mhm.
rather than a reason to be afraid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. As you were saying that, sort of thought popped in my mind that I always use to push myself out of my comfort zone. It's that if you want to be an artist or you want to pursue a certain career, you have two options. You can pursue it and you're successful, and then you die happy that you succeeded, or you pursue it and you don't make it, and then you die, and then everyone forgets in 100 years. So it's like, either way, it all kind of comes to the same point. So you might as well give it a shot.
I love it. I love it. And it feels existential, but at the same time, it's like, it's what it is, right?
Mm.
And so there's something very precious about that. And I feel that life has a way of, Rumi has this quote, what you seek is seeking you. And I really love that because as you continue to pursue these things, they come towards you. Sometimes the things that we're looking for, we already have. And so the opportunity to really just live in the present, live in the moment, and embrace what you have. And in that, without fear, you can find, your purpose. It's fascinating. There's a way that we live as creatives and as people who have been able to shut down the voice of fear and shut down the voice of what will other people think. There's something very liberating about that, but it opens up so many doors to things that you may not have considered because that's something you don't have to worry about.
Definitely.
So as we wrap up here, I've framed this as a unique journey of a creative going through a layoff process. What would you do differently if you were to go back 9 months ago to your layoff? Is there anything that you would tell Trey?
As much as I talked about appreciating the moment and trying to have fun with it and to take more time off, I still think there was part of me that was still in a state of, I really have to get my next job like lined up ASAP. There still was that lingering thought that might have like ruined some moments when I was overseas. But I would just tell him, look, you're gonna get a job within a couple months. So almost treat this as if it's a sort of sabbatical. I always hear these stories of a lot of my friends who are getting laid off. Like it's crazy the amount of people that are going through it. But everyone says if they knew how quickly that they were able to find their job, they would have definitely pursued some of their passions. They would have spent more time with loved ones. And I wish that I'd just taken more time for that.
What would you advise folks to do? Advise folks to do when it comes to listening to their inner creative?
I get this question asked a lot as well, just in my personal life, because people have sort of seen me go through it. There's two answers and they're quite different to that question. The first one is a very practical answer. And this is what kind of carried me across it is as artists, we're drawn to this industry because we're not particularly driven by maximizing economics or financial gain. But I would say what helped me the most was saving and investing and having that solid base that I knew that, hey, look, absolute worst case scenario, I can support myself and my lifestyle for at least a couple of years. And that gave me a complete sense of security and ability to stay calm in a situation most people wouldn't. And I think artists, they kind of neglect that side. They're like, no, I want to pursue the art that I want to. But that kind of leads to the second piece of advice is once you do have that security, I think, yeah, you have to listen to your inner voice. You have to listen to what is the art that you want to make? What is it that you want to leave behind, hypothetically, if you were to, pass, in the near future? And, for me, thinking that if I was to, I guess, leave behind only a legacy of advertising and commercials and content that people want to swipe away 1 second after viewing it, that wouldn't really sit right with me. So I'm currently going through this sort of transformation of finding purpose in my art. And I would say, listen to that voice, because if you don't listen to it, it's always going to be there and it's not going to go away unless you address it.
Well said. Well said. Trey, thank you for the time. I've learned so much from you. And as I'm watching more of your videos, so I really believe that this is not the last time we're going to chat.
Yeah, definitely.
You've dropped some incredible gems here. Where can people find you, learn more about your work, and follow you to learn more?
So on YouTube, Trey, TRE -333, and on Instagram, Silvestre _3000.
Folks, thank you for listening to today's episode. It was different. I believe that this really came from an angle that we haven't explored before on the podcast. So thank you for spending time with us today. If today's story inspired you, please subscribe and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. If you have any questions, you can drop them below. I'll tag Trey as well if you have questions for him. For more insights, please do follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and our community that's rewriting what's possible after a layoff. Just remember that every ending holds the blueprint for a new beginning. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
You guys.